On today's episode, we review the latest kids movie. We talk about some best practices for purchasing your next computer, tablet, or phone. And of course, we have a weekly challenge. My name is Luke Clayton, and this is Connection Culture. Welcome back, and of course, please take a moment to subscribe. We're available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also like and follow our Facebook page and keep up with our content there. Of course, please take a moment to like and share if you are watching this video. We would greatly appreciate that. Now, in terms of movies and entertainment updates, I really don't have much. In my opinion, there's been a little bit of a lull in the movie releases. Yes, there's been movies coming out these past few weeks, but we kind of have hit that little bit of a lull that conventionally happens most normal years with movies, where towards the end of the summer, maybe it's kind of some of the not as great movies come out. There's some that are out that I've heard of, haven't seen. They seem to be doing well. For example, Free Guy, have not seen it. Might see it, might not. But I have recently seen the kids movie that is all the craze, and that is, of course, the infamous or famous, however you want to see it, Paw Patrol movie. Now, just to clarify, I did not see this just for sake of reviewing it. I saw it because I have a 4-year-old daughter who adores Paw Patrol, and so, of course, we went together to see it, and yes, she enjoyed it. She thought it was awesome, just as any 2 to 4-year-old child who is a Paw Patrol fan will think. So that leads into my review commentary, whatever you want to say. Look, here's the thing. It's exactly what you would expect from an hour and a half long of Paw Patrol. It's a bunch of silly, kind of goofy type of things that happen, a bunch of kid humor, and again, it's Paw Patrol. I didn't have super high expectations, and I'll just tell you, if you are a parent that's going to take your kids, set your expectations accordingly. Again, it is Paw Patrol after all. And so, to make a clarification, it is a kids movie, not a family movie. Now, of course, a movie, any movie that's for kids, I suppose, is for families in that it's family friendly and can be watched by anyone, and sure, Paw Patrol fits that category. However, I define a family movie as a movie that's not only maybe acceptable for people of all ages, but that is also enjoyable for people of all ages. Take a Pixar movie, for example. Pixar has just become the master of making kid-friendly content, for the most part, that has a really deep and meaningful storyline, great character development, and all people of all ages enjoy watching Pixar. And I know I'm in that category. And so that's what I love about Pixar movies, is that my 4-year-old daughter and me being 30 years old, and then even people that are older, can enjoy the movies that they put out. Paw Patrol doesn't exactly meet that criteria. And yes, they seem to kind of attempt to maybe have some of this deeper storytelling, but just between you and me, they don't do a fantastic job. But again, I'm not telling you not to see Paw Patrol. Go see it. Again, if you've got Paw Patrol fans at your house, your kids are going to love this movie. And you say, man, going to see it, that's a little too much effort. Totally understand. You can actually stream this as well with a Paramount Plus subscription. I'm really not sure all the details, but I do know that if you have a Paramount Plus subscription, it is available to stream to you as well. And so either way, you would be able to watch this movie whether you went to the theater or chose to watch it at home. That's all I got for you right now. Now, there is kind of a good slate of movies coming up here in the fall. We've got a few Marvel movies I'm going to plan on seeing. There is the latest Marvel installment is coming out this weekend. I do hope to see that in the next couple weeks, so be on the lookout for my review and thoughts on that, and many other movies to come in the weeks and months ahead. For now, we're going to pivot our conversation to something that we actually recorded for an earlier episode, but it wound up getting cut for time. And so we're going to go back to that now, because here in the next couple weeks, sometime in the first couple weeks of September, Apple is expected to announce new iPhones, which will begin a season of them introducing iPhones, iPads, new MacBooks, computers. And even though you may not plan on purchasing something from Apple specifically, what this often triggers is a type of buying cycle for consumers in general. Because we're coming into the holiday season, Apple strategically places all of these product announcements before the holiday season so that you're buying Christmas gifts for others and maybe even for yourself. And you're going to be thinking about buying computers, phones, iPads. And I will be honest with you, I'm a huge fan of Apple, but oftentimes people get kind of ripped off when it comes to Apple. And so in this segment, I talk through the pros and cons, the different things to watch out for. It's kind of a buyer's guide to your computing devices for the fall. So we'll get right to that. And for those of you watching, allow me to introduce myself wearing a different shirt. Here we go. So you're in the market for a new computer. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. And nowadays, I said computer or computing device because computers really are taking all forms. They are, of course, in your conventional desktop way, kind of like the one behind me here, where you're kind of set up at a desktop. But then, of course, there's laptops. Now there's even tablets and iPads and iPhones and smartphones that are that really essentially are more powerful than computers were even 10 years ago. And so let's just talk through this. You know, what's going to be your best approach for a new computer? Well, I would ask myself a question first, and that is this: how are you using your computer or device? Most people use their computer for browsing the web, checking email, getting on Facebook, typing up Word documents, viewing or editing spreadsheets. This describes the typical, if you will, consumer average user of a computer. Now, there are also those who use a computer for more intensive projects like video editing, photo editing, you know, a photographer, somebody who does video. I would be in this category because this is what I do. And this is considered more, you know, resource intensive type of work. So depending on how you answer this question is really going to determine where you go. If you are in the more professional photo, video space, or you're looking to get into it, then I can just tell you this: you are going to want a higher class of computer, and you're going to want to make room in your budget for it. You're going to be very disappointed if you just get some, you know, low-level consumer stage, if you will, computer or device. And I would argue that even those who do casually use your computer, you could also be disappointed if you don't plan and budget accordingly. And so now let's talk about this. Speaking of budget, let's talk about budget versus longevity. Okay, so here's really what it comes down to. You're going to get what you pay for. There is a direct correlation between the price and how long that computer or device is going to last. So here's the thing. If you're looking to go and you buy a cheap computer, I mean, literally, you can go online on, you know, maybe an Amazon or an eBay or somewhere like that, and you can buy a laptop for $200. It's possible to find those. But I can just tell you this. I don't care how you use a computer, you're going to be very disappointed with that $200 laptop. So here are some minimum budgets that I would place on any of these devices or computers. So if you're going to get a laptop, just plan on spending $1,000 or more dollars. And I'm not talking about I'm not talking about Mac or PC, although we'll get to that here in just a bit. I'm talking about either one. It doesn't matter. $1,000 minimum. Yeah, again, it's possible to find the $200 to $300 ultra cheap laptop, but here's the question you have to ask yourself: do you want to have to buy yourself another computer in a year? I mean, if you're a college student or you're the parent of a college student, we're starting school and going back to school and college soon. So here is what I would ask: do I want to have to buy my student a new laptop here in a year? Or you say, well, that's out of the question. Well, then I'm going to ask myself, well, then I want to get something for my student that's going to last them for the 4 or more years of their time at college. That should be the goal, because in the long run, it can be much more expensive to just having to buy a new junky device or computer every year or every few months even. So for a laptop, again, $1,000 plus. Now, if you're going to go with a desktop, you could probably get away with maybe setting a budget for maybe in the $600, maybe $700 range. Because with a desktop, you have to consider, well, in addition to the actual computer itself, you're going to have to buy a screen. You're going to have to buy the accessories to make it worse. Make it work, a mouse, a keyboard, things like that. And so that is something that you can do to maybe save money. But of course, with a desktop, you also lose the portability factor. So another option you can consider is a tablet. And in this case, you want to set your budget for $300 to $400. It is possible to get a very affordable tablet. And for phones, if you're wondering, even now, phones nowadays, kind of the going rate for a phone is like in the neighborhood of $1,000 if you buy it outright. And but as far as cumulative price, for most people, you can set a budget of $700, maybe $800 for a good smartphone, and you'll be just fine. And you can get them for even cheaper than that. We'll talk more about smartphones here in just a bit. So here's another factor you have to consider in addition to the budget, because again, you're getting what you pay for, but you also want to ask, what is the age of the device when it was at the time of when you purchased it? So if you're going to buy it used, how long did somebody have that device before? Did they have it for a year, 2 years? Because they've already put that much wear and tear on it. So you might be getting a good deal, but your longevity, or your lifespan, I should say, has already been kind of started to chip away before you ever even got the device, because somebody else has already used it. And also, I should point this out. There is a difference between used and refurbished. So used typically means just what I was describing. Someone has already used it for a time and now they're reselling it. Refurbished, at least when it comes to manufacture refurbished, this means that oftentimes it means that it was maybe a return. Maybe someone returned the device, and that device was then, tested and evaluated and determined, hey, this is still good, and they put it back on the shelf. Or it just means that it's simply been sitting on the shelf for a long time. Just like there's kind of an expiration date for food, there's technically an expiration date for new electronics as far as when they can be considered new or not. So once it reaches a certain date after it was initially created and released, once it reaches a certain date, it becomes classified as refurbished. So oftentimes when you're buying refurbished, especially if you're buying a refurbished device directly from the manufacturer, you're actually getting a new device. It's just not considered new because it's been on the shelf for so long. Now, here is the thing. Even in that case, you have to consider that older models of any type of device, they're not going to last as long as the latest models, even if that device has never been used. So even if you get it brand new in the box, but it's technically refurbished, and for example, like right now, the latest iPhone is the iPhone 12, and let's say you get an iPhone 10s or 10R. That would have been, I believe, 2 years ago. I might be off on that, but it's about a 2-year-old phone. But you could still technically buy them brand new. Well, that's fine, but you just have to remember that even though it's brand new, it's an older model, so it's just not going to last as long as the latest model. I'm not always saying that you should always get the latest and greatest. I'm just giving you things to consider because I do believe that if you are on a healthy, reasonable upgrade cycle for your devices, that yes, you could technically get the latest and greatest every time, and that would actually be the best move. I'm not saying get it every time a new phone comes out, but if you've had a phone for 3 years and it's time to upgrade, if you can afford the extra, a lot of times in the case of a phone, an extra $100 will get you the latest model. If you can afford to do that, I would recommend to go for it. So that is, and if you're looking for refurbished products, again, be very careful who you buy from. If you're buying from a user on eBay and they claim it's refurbished, you can't necessarily have the guarantee that it's truly refurbished. They probably have just used it and they're marking it as refurbished just for the sake of selling. I've seen that many times. So only buy from reliable sources if you're wanting to get something refurbished. With that said, I've got a link in the show notes to the Apple refurbished store. They do have some really good refurbished devices there, so check that out. Now, here's some other factors that will affect the longevity of your device. So you have to ask yourself how you're going to use it, how often you're going to use it, and also where you're going to use it. So we've already talked about how. You know, are you going to be doing a lot of intensive projects on it that's going to really work the processor and the inner components of the computer? Or are you just going to be doing, you know, your Word documents and spreadsheets and kind of just standard stuff? So that's going to affect it. But also how often. If you're going to be using your computer or device every day, it's going to put more wear and tear on it. I'll tell you this, I'll just interject this here. When it comes to how I use my computer and how often, I have to upgrade my computer every 2 to 3 years. I can definitely start to see the wear and tear. My last computer was the battery was nearly completely gone. It was a laptop and the battery was nearly completely diminished and done. And that's just because of how often I used it. And so when it comes to how and how often you're using it, and then where you use it is very important too. And here's what I mean by where. Is it going to be something that's mobile or something that's a little bit more stationary? Like I said, talk about a desktop computer. Well, it's just going to sit there. It's not going to be, you're not going to move it, obviously, because you can't. It's very difficult to. The more mobile the device, the shorter the lifespan. It's just as simple as that. You're probably, and you should be upgrading your phone more often than you're upgrading your computer. And one of the reasons is because it's more mobile. You're more likely to drop it. You're more likely to spill on it. You're more likely to just have the normal, I should say, wear and tear of every day. So you have to keep that in mind. And so because of this, desktops tend to last longer than laptops. And so I just want to throw that out there. If you're in the market for a true computer and having a laptop to take with you is not a big deal, well, then maybe consider getting a desktop. There are pros and cons to both. For example, again, the desktop tends to last longer because it stays in one place. But of course, then laptop, you have mobility. With a laptop, you can work from anywhere. With a desktop, you're locked to working at your office, which I will say can be a huge benefit. There was a time before I was self-employed where I had an office that I went to where I was working and I had a desktop. That's all I had. And so it was actually really nice. Like when I was done and I left my office and I came home, I was done with work for the day. There was really no easy way, I should say, for me to kind of start working from home. So that could be a potential benefit. But again, you got to weigh the pros and cons and see what's best for you. Now, let's talk for a moment about the Mac versus PC debate, if you will. And here's really the truth. And that's this. Macs last longer than PCs. Almost every time. Macs last longer than PCs. Unless you just really destroy a Mac. You take it, you drop it, you just really do some crazy damage to it. It's going to outlast a PC almost every time. I know people who have had the same MacBook in terms of a laptop for 5-10 years. In fact, the Mac that I use to capture the video and audio for these episodes, it's an older MacBook, and it is from, I believe, 2012, 2013. It's actually, I looked it up right now because I want to be, it's a late 2013 model, so it's about 8 years old, and it still works. And honestly, somebody could take this laptop and it would be more than enough for what they need. And in the case of the purpose that it's serving for me, it is fantastic. So 5 to 10 years is how long laptops laptops can, MacBooks, Apple laptops can last. And then there are some desktop Macs, like an iMac or a Mac Mini, a Mac Pro. I have known these to last for 10 plus years. Again, where I used to work, the way they did it is whenever somebody would get a new Mac, well, they often didn't take that Mac and just get rid of it. They would kind of find a new person for it, so someone who maybe with less tenure, hadn't been around as long, and they kind of got the older Mac. The new upgrades went to the kind of seniority. It was kind of a nice perk if you'd been there a while. Nonetheless, I would see these desktop Macs continue to get moved around to different users, and they would last 10 or more years. And so I just really can't say enough good about Mac, and I just heard too many horror stories, if you will, about how the lifespan of PCs is just pathetic. And so in fact, I was just talking to someone the other day, and we were on a video chat, and they were having trouble, and they said, it's this computer, it's a PC, whatever. And I was like, kind of gave them a spiel about what I'm telling you about getting a Mac, and they said, yeah, but I just bought this a year ago. So after 1 year, they're already experiencing some pretty significant performance issues with their PC. Again, my experience is get a Mac, and especially if you're getting a laptop. We talk about laptop versus desktop. If you want a laptop, get a Mac. Again, they're just more durable. They're literally physically more durable. They're made from aluminum, whereas most PC laptops are made of plastic. There's some that are made of aluminum as well, but they're physically more durable. And in my experience, a PC just doesn't last. A PC laptop. PC desktops can be a little bit more reliable and more durable. But again, I just want to talk through. You say, hey, Mac versus PC. The biggest thing for me is longevity. Yes, Macs tend to run more expensive. In fact, they're almost always more expensive. However, they're going to last longer, and you get what you pay for. Now, when it comes to a tablet, a good tablet, that might be more than enough for you. You might be fine having just a good tablet, but it has to be a good one. There are people that I genuinely think they could, if you will, survive this life, do their work, do what they need to for their personal life, all from a tablet. But it has to be a good one. And again, by now you know that I do like Apple's products, but I'm not just trying to be a fanboy. This is generally based on experience, my experience with myself, with other people. But iPad has also won this tablet market. Apple is at the top of its game when it comes to iPad. There's also Microsoft Surface. It's probably coming in second place. I don't know if I'd call it a close second, but it's back there. Because iPad just is, when it comes to tablets, again, more physically durable, easier to use, and just a more reliable device. And here's the thing to know about iPads, though. They last about 3 to 5 years. So their lifespan is shorter than that of a laptop. Now, iPads, I will say, are getting better. They are, in fact, the latest iPad Pro just got a massive performance boost. Basically, it has the performance that's equivalent of that of Apple's latest laptops. So they've made the power and performance of their iPad and their laptop basically the same if you get that iPad Pro model. And so iPads are getting better in terms of Apple keeps truly improving these in drastic ways every few years. And so the longevity of an iPad could be longer, but in my experience, 3 to 5 years is about how long an iPad lasts. And that's mainly because of the mobility factor. It's even easier to carry around an iPad than it is a laptop, and eventually you could drop and crack the screen or do some other type of devastating damage to it. That's typically one of the many reasons that someone has to upgrade their iPad. I can tell you this, I've had to upgrade 2 iPads for that very reason, because it dropped and I shattered the screen. Speaking of shattering screens, let's talk about iPhones. Now, here's my number one piece of advice when it comes to buying a smartphone of any kind, but especially an iPhone. Now, I have been praising Apple throughout this entire segment here. However, this is where I'm going to come down hard on Apple, and not Apple specifically as the creators of these devices, but on how they market these devices to the average consumer. And that's so my biggest piece of advice for an iPhone is this: don't overpay for your phone. They're already expensive. They're already very, very what many would consider overpriced. But the iPhone Pro model, I should say, the iPhone Pro is probably the greatest marketing gimmick that Apple has ever come out with. Their whole Pro line of products in general, but especially when it comes to the iPhone Pro, the greatest marketing deception of all time is that the iPhone Pro is leaps and bounds better than just the regular iPhone. But here is the truth. The iPhone Pro is not necessary for most people. It really has three major enhancements. And so the first is the most obvious, that's the camera. Okay, so for example, the iPhone 12 Pro has 3 cameras, whereas the iPhone 12 only has 2. And yeah, there's a lot of other things. And if you're a videographer, photographer, you might appreciate that. But it does have these slight camera enhancements, and it has a very small speed boost. So it's a little bit faster. The performance is going to be a little bit better than the 12. And this year, or on the iPhone 12 release, it was more less noticeable than it's ever been. The speed boost differences are very minuscule, and so you get a slight speed boost, and then there is a storage option. Then when it comes to, you can get higher storage options. I think with the iPhone 12 Pro, you can get a terabyte storage option. And we're going to talk about how that's completely unnecessary here in just a bit. So you're really not going to notice the difference in camera and the difference in the, like I said, slight speed and performance improvements. You're really not going to know that. And here's the thing. There's very unlikely that you need any more than 64 gigabytes of storage on your phone. 64 gigs is the minimum. Now, there was a time where Apple was, for whatever reason, continuing to make their phones on, like, I remember it wasn't too long ago where the smallest size you could get was 16 gigs. I actually remember when it was 8, but really just in recent years, the smallest size storage you could get was 16 gigs. That was definitely not enough. And 32 gigs is kind of close. 64 gigs at this time is more than enough for what you are going to, for what the average person is going to need. So don't let them upsell you on storage size on any device, and especially when it comes to the the Pro models. You don't need the bigger storage. I don't know why in the world 99% of people would need a 1 terabyte storage option on their iPhone. And so these are the biggest difference between the Pro that the Pro has to offer. And now, again, I'll make this little disclaimer for Pro people. Those of you that work with a lot of video and photo, I kind of talked about you earlier, your photographers, your videographers, you would appreciate the better cameras. You would truly be able to take advantage of it. And because of the higher level of, for example, small side note here, technical, you could shoot a form of raw footage on the iPhone Pro. Now, what does that mean? Well, it just means it's a very high quality video file, and it's really honking huge. Okay, so if you're going to take advantage of that, then yes, you do need a phone with more storage. You're in the 1%, if you will, that need the phone with more storage. But again, if you don't put yourself in this Pro person class, it's really not necessary. And in fact, you know what? Some might put me in the Pro class. I do video stuff. I do stuff like that. I can tell you this. I have, just looky here. If you're watching, this is the iPhone 12 mini, actually. And you know what? It's more than enough. It's fantastic. I don't have the 3 cameras. I only have 64 gigs of storage. It's more than enough. So don't get ripped off when it comes to buying a phone. Now, here's a recap. You're going to get what you pay for when it comes to anything. Like I said, the only exception I would say is the iPhone. You're going to be more than happy on the iPhone versus the Pro, and you're going to save a lot of money. It's not going to make a big difference. But when it comes to computers and even tablets, you're going to get for you pay for, and in almost every case, when you do spend more, you're going to be more satisfied with that product and have a truly better product. And remember, older models are still going to have shorter lifespans. Used models, used phones, used devices, they're going to obviously have shorter lifespans as well. And don't get upsold on these pro features. You don't need them. You don't need to have the pro phone, the big camera and everything. You'll save a lot of money if you just buy the baseline entry-level phone, especially from Apple. I don't know a lot about Android, so for those Android people out there, feel free to share your thoughts. Maybe it's completely different in the Android community, but when it comes to iPhones, you don't need to overspend. So I hope this helps you as we talk through, helping, navigating, if you will, all the different options for computers, tablets, devices. I'm really honestly not a tech expert. I don't know a lot about the ins and outs of computer. I know people that are tech geniuses that can just do amazing things on computers. If you never know, I just am what I would say a very aware person when it comes to consumer technology in particular. And so when it comes to buying a computer, buying a device, just set a budget, set your expectations accordingly to that budget. And remember, you're going to get what you pay for. And in the end, you don't need something too expensive, but you don't want to cheap out. You want to find something right there in the middle that'll be just right. Well, I hope you found that to be helpful. And I should mention that if you have any questions at all about a specific purchase you're planning on making, don't hesitate to reach out. You can leave a comment, or if you want to reach out to me privately, you can send an email. You can reach me at luke@mustincrease.com. I actually do not consider myself any type of a technical expert or wizard. I appreciate technology. I know a thing or two about consumer tech. However, I do also know some people that really know the ins and outs of tech. And so maybe either if I can't help you, maybe I can connect you with someone who can. So please, if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out. Well, that brings us to our weekly challenge. And I'll be honest with you, I know that the past couple weeks of the challenge have been maybe a little bit more difficult to embrace or implement. Last week, we talked about the daring feat of actually deleting social media and other potentially distracting apps. The week before was very controversial because I told you to stop taking pictures of your kids. No, that's not what I said at all. Go back and listen to the episode. What I said, and I encouraged you to live in the moment and prioritize enjoying the moment over just capturing the moment. And so because of the controversy for the past couple of weeks of the, having a little bit more difficult challenges, I'm going to go easy on you this week. All right. So just bear with me here. And actually, it's not much of a challenge as much as it is just maybe a reassurance. And that's this. You have to realize everything is going to be okay. Look, it has been a wild year and a half. Well, really a year and a half, ever since the almighty C word, COVID. Ever since that pandemic started, things have seemed to be crazy. I mean, in the past year alone, we've dealt with a pandemic, an insane election cycle, which also was just insane in terms of politics. We've dealt with racial unrest, and now, most recently, we're dealing with a uptick in the pandemic. What seems like cases going up and whatnot, and also now we're dealing with unrest in the Middle East. And by the way, my heart goes out to the people of Afghanistan and our citizens and allies that are there that seem to be stranded and trapped there. Our prayers are with you. But this has been obviously dominating the news cycle with that issue. And then now, as of just recording of this recording, I should say, we've been dealing with issues with weather. Parts in my home state here in Tennessee have experienced just horrible flooding that's killed several people. And then now we've got Hurricane Ida that's hit the Louisiana Gulf Coast area, and thousands are without power. And look, it seems like a pretty bad time. But I have to ask this question. It's a question I often ask myself. Are things really that much worse than they were a decade or half a century or more ago? Or do things just seem worse because we are more aware and in tune to what's going on than ever before? In the not too distant past, I remember when the most accessible way to get our news was to go to a desktop computer, to log into dial-up, or if you're fortunate enough to have something like broadband, wait several seconds or minutes for a web page to load, and read your news that way. That was the most accessible way to get news. And in the not too distant past before that, the most accessible way was to go to your television, turn it on, wait for an evening report, and you got about a digest of 30 to 60 minutes of news a day. And the not too distant past before that, probably the most efficient way was to turn on a radio or rewind, and maybe it was to read a newspaper. Or rewind before that, it was to sit around and wait for the town crier to say, hear ye, and read the latest news or proclamation from the king. News has become more and more accessible as technology and media has become more and more advanced. With the advancement of technology, media becomes more simple and easy to consume than ever before. And there's a lot of good that comes with that, but there sure is a whole lot of bad that comes with it. Now, if you want to access the news and you want to know the latest, most up-to-date thing that's going on, you just have to get that little screen out of your pocket and open up a news app or Google or Facebook, and boom, now you know what's going on. And you know more that is going on in the world than ever before. It doesn't take much for you to literally have dozens of news stories in your pocket any given day. It's just the nature of this fast-paced, high-tech society that we live in. The point of all this is so that you will take a step back, maybe take a moment to unplug. See, turning off those notifications, deleting those distracting apps, all of these have a reason. And there's all kinds of benefits that come with it. But one of the greatest things is just maybe giving your mind a break. Trust me, the world is going to keep on getting bad, if you will. It's not going to get much better before it gets much worse, I suppose. There's always going to be bad news to read or watch. There's always going to be something going on. The news and the media are not going to allow you to ever have a moment of peace where they say, hey, you know what? Actually, nothing happened today. Check back tomorrow. You know that's not going to happen. So what you have to do is tell yourself, you know what? I don't care what happened today. I'll check back tomorrow. Don't get me wrong. Be an informed citizen. Know what's going on. But do not worry yourself to death about the news cycle and about all that's going on and all the bad and all the horrible things of the world, because, like I said, no matter what day you wake up, if you search it out, you'll find the bad news. But maybe take a moment instead and think about the good news. Because I'll tell you this, I'm happy to be living right where I'm at. I'm happy that life is the way it is for me right now. I'm grateful to be just living life. And while there's an argument that things are worse than ever before, I believe there's also an argument out there that there is no time better to be alive than right now. That's the reality I choose to live in. I'm not looking for hopeful, foolish optimism that's blind to the woes of the world. Of course not. But I'm also not going to live in such a concern and fear that I don't take a moment to be grateful and thankful and see the good in life. So, the challenge for this week? Well, just realize. Take a deep breath, take a step back, realize and tell yourself, it's going to be okay. We've made it this far, we'll make it another day. And maybe, just maybe, give the news a break. It'll be there tomorrow, next week, whenever you decide to pick it back up. Connection Culture is a production of the Must Increase Network. The show is edited and produced by Bo Snyder, and the host and executive producer is myself, Luke Clayton. I am so grateful that you joined me for this episode and that you join me each week for the new episodes that we drop. And of course, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this content with others. If you found it helpful to you, there's a good chance it will help someone else out there as well. And of course, when you share content like this, it is you getting behind what you believe in. It's you becoming a contributor rather than just a consumer. And why is that important? Well, because you are going to find so much more fulfillment in being a creative contributor than to just be a mindless, constant consumer. We'll see you next time right here on Connection Culture.